And they're not leaving a job because they hate their job. They're leaving a job because people come to work with trauma. People view the world through the lens of their trauma. That's not what I want to be. And I made changes to reflect that. It never works that way. They don't leave it at the door and say, oh, hey, I come to work without my trauma. I left it at the door. No, many leaders do not take that into account when they are leading their subordinates or leading their team. We don't go to war with somebody we don't know. We don't know if they're going to have our back. All right, so where did I start and how did I become a leader today? Well, I started in the Army as a combat medic in the Army. I think for me, that was the foundation, that was the catalyst to get me to where I am today. It taught me the foundational principles of being led, first of all, being part of a team and serving in part of a team, and ultimately leading to me leading the team. That's where it all began back in 1989, 1990, when I joined the military, right at the cusp of when we went to war. I ended up going to war and returning and changing from combat specialist to a respiratory specialist. And I've held various positions as a respiratory therapist, from charge respiratory therapist to management to a director of respiratory to respiratory consultant. So I've had an array of different leadership opportunities since the military, and that kind of shaped who I am today. I've had an opportunity to have good leaders that I serve and bad leaders that I serve. So, of course, I learned from both of them. Those that I had problems with, I ultimately said in myself that that's not the type of leader I want to become. That's not what I want to be. And I made changes to reflect that. And those leaders that I liked, that I served well under, and that they served me well, I said, that's the type of leader, that's the attributes I want to have as a leader. So I kind of tailored my own leadership style based on my experience from being led. So that's what made me who I am. And also, I actually got my doctorate in leadership because of that. I saw a lot of disparity in different organizations that I worked, where the leadership was more focused on productivity and kind of left the people part of the job out, like treating staff members and employees like they were robots with no emotions and no families, and kind of did that, and I didn't like that. Also in healthcare, did that, and I didn't like that. Also in healthcare, there's a lot of people put in charge that have no experience on how to lead. And so you end up with this turnover of people leaving the job, and they're not leaving the job because they hate their job. They're leaving the job because they hate the management. You get positions like charge respiratory therapist or charge nurse. A charge nurse means they're in charge. But who taught them how to be in charge? No one. So you get this problem in lower and mid management, where you're put in a position of leadership or supervisory and you don't know how to lead the people. All you know is how to make them do your bidding, but you fail on the people side. For example, trauma. People come to work with trauma. To think that they can just do the job and leave their problems at the door, it never works that way. See, what happens is people view the world through the lens of their trauma. So I'm going to respond based on the trauma that I'm going through. It could be anything from an argument or a death of a loved one or sickness. It could be any of those and more or worse. And they come to work. They don't leave it at the door and say, oh, hey, I come to work without my trauma. I left it at the door. No, they come to it. And I think what happens is many leaders do not take that into account when they are leading their subordinates or leading their team. How do I determine what a good leader is? A good leader, when they're leading you, have an understanding of who you are. That's what the orientation process is for, and the precepting and the mentoring. When a new employee comes to the organization, they learn the value, the core values, and the vision and the mission of the organization, and then they get to know the leaders get to know their team members, and then from that space they move forward, right? So in knowing your team, number one, you would need to know what their strengths and their weaknesses are. In other words, you're going to need to use a level of emotional intelligence in order to capitalize or allow or facilitate the growth and the productivity that you desire. So that would be number one, getting to know your team. You know, when we go to war, the guys that we're surrounded around, we know each other. We know our strengths, we know our weaknesses, and all that. We don't go to war with somebody we don't know. We don't know their value. We don't know their strengths. We don't know if they're going to have our back. As we say in the military, our six. We don't know if they're going to have our six. So we have to get to know these individuals so we can see and know for sure that, hey, when I'm in a tough spot, you're going to have my back, right? So in leadership, one of the first things I think in order to delegate, in order to produce a very effective team is number one, learn your team. Now, there's lots of exercises you can do to do that. You know, one of them is tell me two truths and one lie. And so you gather everyone in the team and you say, okay, I want you to tell me two truths and one lie, and we have to decide which one's the lie, you know, so that we can get to know each other. It's a fun game, and most people know that game, but it's used to learn and grow and build a rapport with your team members. If I was gonna say the second thing that I like in a good leader, and I use it myself, is setting clear expectations. Oh my goodness. I think that's very, very crucial when you're leading, to set clear expectations. You know, you hear that saying, you inspect what you expect. Trust but verify. You know, we hear those terms all the time, but they're extremely true. A leader must be able to set expectations that is clear and understood by the team member. I say this all the time when I'm training and talking to others, is that communication doesn't end with you speaking and people listening. It ends with understanding. If you have communicated to your team member and you didn't get the results you needed, sometimes you need to turn the mirror and face yourself and ask some questions. Did I effectively communicate that to my team member? Did they communicate to me that they understood what was being asked of them to do? And it's verified in the results, right? That something went wrong. Either it was me or it was them. But as a leader, we should always turn that mirror to face ourselves and say, hey, maybe I didn't quite explain that the way I needed to explain that. It was clear in my mind, but maybe it wasn't clear in their mind, right? So I'm telling you, emotional intelligence, number one, get to know your team, you know, and in the second one, setting clear expectation. I like for when my boss tells me to do something or asks me to do something, I understand exactly what he is asking, right? And that they're clear, because if they don't meet the expectation, but they were clear to them, then training may be an opportunity, right? There may be some opportunity for training. Maybe they don't understand. It's not because they didn't get the information clear to them. They just don't know how to do it. And so maybe when you set the expectations, they don't meet the expectation, there's more training that needs to happen, okay? Those are some of the things that I look at when I'm thinking about a good leader. You know, for me, when I'm serving, I'm looking for somebody who wants to know who I am. I mean, I'm not trying to get seriously emotionally attached, but you need to understand what my strengths and weaknesses are, and a little bit about my personal life, because they bleed into the work life. You know, June 1st, 2012, my grandson drowned in a pool. Do you think I came to work motivated? No. You see what I'm saying? So people have trauma and they have to deal with the trauma. And as a leader, you need to be able to discern that, or have a policy where they can openly communicate with you so that they can explain what the issues are, so you can provide them with the resources that they need so that they can be productive in the workplace. So the third one, if you think about it, was providing training, appropriate training. So emotional intelligence, setting clear expectation, and providing training. And then another thing that I like about a leader is giving me some autonomy to get the work done. I don't need somebody in my back every 5 minutes to say, hey, did you do it? Did you do it? You know, that kind of stuff. Now, if I need help, I'm one of those. If I need help, I promise you, I'm coming to you. Or I'm going to find the answer, or I'm going to look for some resources to help me achieve what you have asked me to do. I had a bad leader who gave me a task to do, and when I didn't do it right, she did it. She took it away from me and she did it. How does that help me grow? Rather than explain to me, hey, this is what you did wrong, this is what I was expecting, this is what you did, I want you to take it back and do XYZ, XYZ. No, she didn't do that. She took it away from me and did the project herself. And I said to myself, that's not how I want people to grow. As a leader, you always have to think in the back of your mind, succession planning. Who's going to hold the baton or the torch when you're not in the building or when you're not on the job, and they're going to do the job right. If you don't take time to grow the people that are in your organization, when you leave or have to go on vacation or whatever, you're going to end up with a problem when you return. So for her to do that to me, it didn't help her situation at all. I needed her to show me what I needed to do to make it right. And plus, it's demoralizing. It makes the individual feel worthless. Well, you can't do it. I'm going to take it away from you. I'm going to give it to somebody else, or I'm going to just do it myself. No, I need you to be a leader, supervisor, and train me and give me some more clear expectations, clear instructions, and let me go at it again. And then provide me more feedback, and then let me go at it again until I get it accomplished. That way I win, you win, and when you're gone or away, I can continue to move the ball forward. That was a very bad experience for me, and it was very demoralizing. Teach your employ. So a way to not overwhelm your employees with the task at hand is what you're saying, right? When they're trying to balance things. Well, the best way is to prioritize every day. I mean, there's a book called The Four Disciplines of Execution. This is like the Bible of prioritizing your workload, because every day there is going to be some type of thing or tragedy that you did not expect, that was not part of your plan for the day, for the work day, and it's going to come, and it's gonna derail you. And in the book, they mention the wildly important goal. He refers to it as the wig. And really what that means is that despite of the train wreck of a day you may have, you still have to move the needle forward with your goal. So the key thing is to prioritize what must I do now? What can wait till tomorrow? What can I delegate to someone else? Okay? And then move forward with that. See, what happens is many of us go in without a plan. When I go to work, I run an organization, so I need to be able, because as soon as I hit that door, it's going to be Dr. Pete, Dr. Pete, Dr. Pete. I go into my office, the door is Dr. Pete, Dr. Pete. If my door's closed, they'll knock on the door. So I have to make into my mind, okay, what are the three things I'm going to accomplish today? And I'm going to prioritize them. I'm going to put them in a number category and say, okay, these things I must do today. The other four things, I'm going to give it to this person and delegate to them. And I'm going to set clear expectations. I'm going to make sure they have the resources to accomplish it. And then I'm going to let them go. I'm going to give them autonomy to complete it. And then some of the other stuff, I'm going to leave for another day. Okay. So that's how you get around that, because you'll never get ahead of it unless you learn to just prioritize, make a list of what's important for that day, and then work and chug away at it. And that book, Four Disciplines of Execution, they call it the wildly important goal. He calls it a WIG, wildly important goal. Really good book. How do you get people to open up so you can understand the strengths and the weaknesses, right? Team building exercises. You get them in a team building exercise, and part of being a leader is being observant. Sometimes they don't have to tell you, you can observe for yourself. Just like a parent can observe a child's strength and weakness without the child saying, we can do that as leaders as well. I can tell who I can put on a task, and I know I don't have to say anything else. And I know who I can't get put on a task without giving extra instructions. I know those type of people, but it's because I spend time with them, and so people will open up eventually enough for you to understand their type of style or what they're weak and strong at. But it really starts with sort of that team building exercise. And again, I can't stress the importance of setting the expectation, clear expectations. And then, for example, I set a clear expectation with you about your job description and your job performance. When you don't meet that mark, I have a conversation with you. Hey, I noticed that you were unable to do this XYZ in the amount of time that you were allotted. This is part of your job description to make sure whatever, and then I'm gonna say, what are some challenges that you feel you're having that are preventing you from doing that? How can I help you so you can improve? So it's not really about getting personable. You were hired for a job. You were hired to perform at a certain level. When you don't perform at a certain level, then we might have to have a conversation. Okay. And so we'll have a conversation. Now, this is not a negative conversation. It's a positive conversation. We don't wait till the end of the year and say, "Hey, by the way, all year you were horrible." No, is we notice it relatively frequent, and then we pull them to the side and we talk to them and say, "Hey, one on one, how's it I can help you?" And then they can open up that way. Sometimes they can. It takes them a while to open up in a large setting. It might be easier one on one. Okay, so those are some of the ways that I've done. I've had some people that way. I've had some people that were kind of aloof, sort of didn't really want to say much, but just wanted to do their job. As long as they were doing their job effectively, there was no problem, But team building exercises, I do a lot of those. Not every day, but maybe once a week or so. We have some type of team building exercise. It could be watching a video on showing appreciation, and then I have them do an exercise. I line all the directors up, and they each have a partner, and they take turns telling the person how much they appreciate them and why they appreciate them, and then they reverse that. I have done that a few times. You wouldn't believe the smiles on their faces when they're being told. It makes a difference, and then people open up that way slowly but surely. So it takes time sometimes. It's not something that happens right away. Some yes, some not so fast. That's my experience. Someone may have a different experience, but it's been effective for me. It has worked for me. I'm kind of charismatic, so I'm gonna get you to talk to me one way or another. I'm kind of relatable like that, so most people will open up. If not in a team setting, one on one they will. Because they have to get to trust you too. If they don't trust you, they're not going to open up because there's a sense of vulnerability when you give of yourself. You're being vulnerable. And some people are not that quick to be vulnerable for fear of being misunderstood or fear of being hurt. There goes that trauma again. You don't know what kind of trauma they're looking through. So there it goes again. They may not open up because hey, they just went to a funeral last week, So again, it takes time. And there's another book that talks about that. The Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. One of the dysfunctions, the first one is the absence of trust. If you don't have trust in a team, then it's a dysfunction. It's not a functional team. People don't trust each other, then they're not going to work well together. But to gain trust, you have to give us a little bit of yourself. So in other words, you have to be vulnerable. When you get into a relationship with a partner or girlfriend or boyfriend, you go on that first date, that's your first vulnerable attack. That's your first attack at being vulnerable. And then you give them a little bit and see what they do with that little vulnerability. If they do well with it, you'll go on a second date, right? And then you give a little bit more yourself, you open up a little bit more, you go on the third date. And the next thing you know, you guys are boyfriend and girlfriends. And the next thing you know, you're married. So the relationship requires some vulnerability to build trust. How do you handle different conversations when you're talking to your team member, right? Number one, reward in public, rebuke in private. Reward in public, rebuke in private. You do not want to embarrass team members in front of a team. If you feel like something's not going the way you need to go, then you need to have a private conversation with them and maybe with HR if necessary. But you have a private conversation with them. Now, with that said, my experience has been I don't tell people I need you in my office. I need you to come to my office. That automatically puts them on the defense, or there's some trepidation or anxiety about going to the principal's office. Instead, I say, when you get a minute, I'd like to speak with you. We're just going to chop it up for a little bit. When you get a second. The other thing is positioning. When you're in my office, if I want to have a conversation with you and keep you in a feeling positive, I don't sit behind my desk, because behind a desk is sort of a position of authority, and some people might feel some angst with it. So what I do is I come around my desk and I sit with you, sort of informal, so that you can let your guard down and we can have a legit conversation. Or I also have a conference table in my office. I sit side by side with you in a conference table, and I face you, and we talk. We have a conversation. But that whole psychology behind the desk, and you're in front of me, and I'm sitting, with my hands, talking to you. It can be a bit. It can create a bit of some anxiety there. I remember when I was running a nursing home in South Carolina, and I had my maintenance director comes to my office, and he is a sergeant major in the army, but he works for me, and he would come to my office, and if I was sitting behind a desk, he would have his hands behind his back like I was his officer. And it's funny because I clocked it. I watched him. When I would sit behind a desk and talk to him, he would stand like that. When I would come around and sit and talk with him on the other side, he would be relaxed. So those little non-verbal cues can impact the direction the conversation goes with a team member. Of course, there's a time when you have to have those conversations in that type of light, but I always try to make my counseling sessions or even my corrective action sessions low stress and lots of positivity. So I'll probably use a sandwich method where I'll highlight some things that you're doing well and highlight some things that we need help with, and then ask you what kind of resources or how can I help you achieve it. That would be my particular cocktail, if you will, on how I do things. So what skills can they practice? Can team members or young leaders use to practice to become effective? I would say it all boils down to this one thing. You get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. You got to package your conversation as if you're speaking to people. This is a person with a heart that did not come to work to get fired. No one comes to work and say, let me see how I can get fired today. No, they come to work wanting to do a job. Now, if they don't do the job right, that's where you come in and mentor them and mold them into what you would have them to be and what you see their potential could be. So, if I was to sum it all up in one, I would say you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. You show me somebody who's a dictator, I'm going to use my tactic, and I guarantee you they'll be wanting to work for me. They'll want to get it done. They'll want to get it done. Team members want to please and do the job right. Most of them. Now you're going to have, statistically, there's always some that don't care. We got that. We already know that. It's there. But most people come to work wanting to make a difference, wanting to do their job, wanting to please their leader, wanting to please the customer. And so we need to learn how to mentor them and coach them into becoming the most effective team member, so that um, they can deliver the product and the performance that the organization desires. So treat people with respect, be professional with them, don't talk down to them. I've had that happen. Being talked down to never works. No one wants to be demoralized to do a job. Then you're not gonna have tenured employees or employees that's gonna stay long term with you if the environment is toxic. So the key to that is to treat people like they're people, like you would want to be treated. That's the whole thing. Treat people the way you want to be treated. I'm not saying to be weak as a leader. That it doesn't make you weak as a leader. Because remember, servant leadership requires you to have empathy. That means putting yourself in other people's feelings and getting an understanding from their perspective how they are. So that's a leadership trait that you should have. Empathy. Leading with empathy is crucial and very, very effective for me. Oh, okay. So you're saying what would be the one word that I could think of that would make it the workplace a better place to work? Smile. You're not fully dressed until you're wearing a smile. You know, to I have had leaders coming in there. You don't know if they're constipated, upset. It's like you can never tell what mood they're in. Sometimes a simple smile can ease the environment, and set a good tone for the day, not just for you, for those you lead. As a matter of fact, there has been days that I have not smiled, and the staff is asking, "What's wrong with Dr. P? What's wrong with Dr. P? Is he okay?" And they'll come to me, "Are you all right?" I was like, oh, I'm fine. Well, you're not smiling. So I have noticed when I come into work without my smile, it impacts the entire building. A smile goes a long way. How much do I think leaders' behavior impact the organization? 100%. Because whether you like it, you are leading by example. Either you're going to lead to impact it in a positive way, or you are leading it to impact it in a negative way. Either way, you're going to be leading. So I choose to lead in a positive light. I want people to have a good time coming to work. I feel like if I lead that way, most of the time, I don't even have to ask people to do stuff. They find stuff to do. They find what needs to be done and they get to work. Remember, I run a small hospital, really, with several departments: maintenance, housekeeping, human resources, business office manager, nursing. There's tons of it. Activities. There's 14 departments: social services, admissions. Can you imagine if I had to give everybody instruction every time I come in? What kind of day it would be? It's nice to come to work and people know what is expected and they know what's in your heart and they get moving. Like today, I had a director that I had asked to do something Monday, and this person sent me a picture of it being completed. And I was like, wow, thank you so much for getting it done. And this person said, yeah, I had a deadline to get it done. I wanted to make sure I get it done. And you know what I turned around and said? Thank you for making what's important to me important to you. And then she said, it was my pleasure. I'm telling you, it works. I come to work with a smile. I treat people like they're human, and I treat them like they're not here to get fired. I give them instructions. I make sure they understand the instructions. I provide them feedback. I provide them the resources they need, and they perform. This happened today. It was very touching. I have another example. Last week, actually 3 weeks ago, we were going to have a pageant for the residents, like Miss America, and we had like seven contestants that was going to be judged. It was going to be a big to do. And the person in charge decided she wasn't going to do it anymore. So I went and talked to her. I said, hey, I heard you're not going to do this thing no more. She says, yeah, it's too hard and I don't have this and I don't have that. I said, I tell you what, there's no way I'm letting you to get out of this. I don't care if you have to do it by yourself. The pageant still must go on. Now, tell me what you need to get this thing done. What are we not giving you? And then she says, well, I need this and this, I need this. I said, say no more. You got it. What else you need? And then she said, I got it. Next thing you know, that I guess she wanted to know that I was invested in what she was trying to do. I proved that I was invested. She created the entire program. It was a packed house. It turned out to be 9 contestants. We had a third, second, and first place winner. It created a community in the facility. Residents participated. Family members came in. Other organizations bought refreshments. Staff members were doing the residents' hair and putting makeup. One staff member bought her grandmother's clothes to let one resident wear it. It became this huge, successful thing. To this day, it happened Friday, and to this day, they are still talking about it. So I can give you example upon example. I just tell them what I want, and I say go. And I provide them the resources to get it done. Sometimes I don't let them get out of it, like this one. I gave a little bit of tough love. I said, you don't get to back out on the residents after you told the residents you're going to do this. Now you say you're not. No, we're not going to do that to them. When I can't even express to you the smiles that were on these people's face. The family members, the residents, even the residents that didn't participate came to see, and they loved it. The staff members felt a sense of accomplishment. And then somebody said, can we do a prom next time? Can we do a prom? I was like, we can do whatever y'all want to do. As long as it's fun and it's bringing positivity into the building and improving the culture, I'm for it. And it was a huge success. Huge success. So again, you're going to lead by example, either by positive or negative. Positive, you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. My advice to young leaders that are looking to become good leaders: becoming a good leader is a journey. You don't just get there and then that you're done. It's a constant molting, if I could say. You constant peeling that banana. You know, I have not arrived. I'm still learning. I'm still evolving. I'm still growing. I still have a mentor. I have people, selected people that I can call when I need advice about certain things. I'm not standing here, sitting here and telling you, oh, yeah, yes, I've reached the epitome of education. But even that type of education, a doctorate doesn't mean you've arrived and you're done. It means you have learned the art of learning. You have learned how to research and find out data and understand data and analyze the data and make inferences about the data and share the data with others. So as a leader, I'm still growing, I'm still analyzing, I'm still researching. So I'm still, analyzing and making inferences and growing and changing and evolving, So I would tell the next person, stay the course. So you made a mistake. Learn from it and keep moving. Get yourself a mentor. Get yourself a coach. If you need me as a coach, I'm happy to help. My information will be listed below, and then you can contact me. My job is to lead leaders and help others grow so that we can impact social change. We need good leaders out there. I'm over it with these bad leaders out there. I want to be a good leader. I want to mentor and help others grow, so that they can lead effectively. What do you look for in a mentor? Somebody who's going where you're going, somebody who has the time to devote to you, somebody who has demonstrated the skill that you want to emulate. So you just don't get anybody off the street. They have to be able to be that example that you need to sort of become, so that you can emulate what they are. And that's all it is. Most people learn from others. Whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, you're being mentored by somebody. Somebody is coaching you. You're learning from somebody. People can reach me at imdrpete.com. That's imdrpete.com. And it's the same for my social platforms: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Facebook is IAMDRPETE. But the rest is imdrpete.com anywhere.